But what inspires me if people are driven by a clear purpose,
of the company,
of the company, and I think it has to be, for me at least, and for many of my colleagues, it has to be focused on solving a problem for patients. Identifying a clear unmet need and making a clear contribution with a purpose of making a difference. And those are often the companies that are most successful. So that's a starting point, and for me that's non-negotiable. Yeah.
I suppose Almirall is a good example of that, aren't they? Because they're in an interesting field right now in dermatology.
Yeah.
There's lots and lots of investment, a ton of interest.
Yeah.
Biotechs as well, and even Barcelona, where you're based. Yeah, that's
Lawrence, it's a great point, and if we want to talk about dermatology a little bit, there has been, of course, as you know, in the past, a lot of focus on oncology, a lot of focus on immunoinflammation. Dermatology, I think in the last couple of years is coming a little bit more in focus, and I think it poses bigger questions to us as society. Dermatology, not always perceived as really serious. Perceived as really cosmetic. But if you work, but if you work in the field, it is the impact dermatological diseases have on patients, on any of us. Ask any teenager with severe acne in an age of social media. The impact is profound.
Mental health,
on mental health, on confidence, and what is the impact of that long term on academic performance? It changes your life trajectory. So it's fascinating. It's a fascinating topic, and you have to ask, what are we prepared to fund as society, to pay for? Do we want to prolong at any costs life end stage? Most of the costs we pay, healthcare systems go in the last couple of years, even months, and yet we skimp around, to fund modern innovative therapies for some of the dermatological diseases that are perceived as cosmetic. But the impact on patients can be profound.
Yeah, it almost brings in the obesity rise, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we do a lot of work with Eli Lilly, and it's a fascinating molecule. No doubt it's making a massive impact.
Yeah.
And it will probably, I imagine, reduce healthcare costs exponentially.
Absolutely.
And probably other illnesses around that, right?
Absolutely.
That could be like diabetes or whatever that can come after.
No, one of the things at the moment in my company, I'm overseeing market access and pricing, which is maybe for chief medical officer also not that usual, but
I'd agree,
I find it fascinating, because I think where we need to get to is to see healthcare, to see medicines, the contribution we make in a more holistic way. It's not only the clinical outcomes, but it's also the economic impact. To your point, Lawrence, it's the economic impact that we need to describe.
Yeah, it's all part of the same ecosystem.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and we can't separate it, and that's one of the things that fascinates me most at the moment. Yeah.
I find it fascinating how the commercial element stayed present in your group, because it's hard to find CMO roles that have a commercial element. But they all say we'd love them to have commercial expertise or understanding, because they can think with the end in mind.
Yeah,
how do you actually get drugs marketed?
Yeah, and I think it also brings me back to my days as a clinician, because ultimately you want to make a difference. You want to somehow bring meaningful value. And the commercial success, the sales, the numbers, for me is just a reflection of the impact your medicines can have. It's a way of keeping score somehow, how much you can make a meaningful contribution, really.
And what do you think the future's like for dermatology then?
I think it's bright. I think there are many diseases that we start to understand better. If you look at some of the diseases that have been neglected for decades, for many, is a disease called hidradenitis suppurativa, which is a very severe form of acne in your axilla region and so on. Patients really, really suffer. There's a huge effort now on bringing modern breakthrough therapies to this area. This has been neglected for many, many years. So I think we're starting to understand these diseases better and put the effort behind it. Yeah.
It's reminded me of a point that Brian Kim said on a previous podcast. He said that when he first started in dermatology, when he was specialised or focusing on the topic of dermatitis, he was laughed at and told, you won't make any money, there was no impact, you won't really help people. Yeah. And then, and fast forward, however many years, it's the main indication within derm that everyone's focusing on. Yeah. So it's just fascinating to see how things can evolve and opinions can develop.
Absolutely. And I think once a field gets traction, gets focus, look in dermatology, we're only scratching the surface. So you may have 8, 10 larger indications that the industry is focusing on at the moment, but then you have over 600 rare diseases. Yeah. So if you pull that patient number together, it's a significant number of people out there today that are completely underserved. Yeah. So the opportunity, conversely, for research, for developing medicines, products, innovative approaches is enormous.